my name is Eva and welcome to this channel, and today we have an extra special video in honor of Bi Visibility Month and Bi Visibility Week. I had the amazing opportunity of chatting with Kirsten King, who is one of the 3 hosts on the amazing podcast, which I've talked about before on this channel, Queer as Fiction. Kirsten and I are going to be talking a little bit about representation, LGBTQ inclusive sex ed, and all that good stuff. So, without further ado, Kirsten, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what Queer as Fiction, the podcast, is?
Hey, I'm Kirsten King. I'm one of the hosts for Queer as Fiction, a podcast where we reimagine couples and write our own fan fiction on the air. I host this podcast with Ashley Perez and Amanda Holland, who are just amazing.
Can you start by talking a little bit about what inspired the podcast and how it all got started?
We started the podcast, originally Amanda texted Ashley and I and was kind of like, hey, I have this crazy idea. Do you guys want to read and react to lesbian erotica? So that's what the podcast originally was. It was us reading and reacting to lesbian erotica. And I think part of the reason why we started this podcast was actually just to hang out. It's really hard to make queer friends and like create a queer community. So for us, it was like a really great opportunity to just, be around queer people more, talk about issues we cared about. And I think that that's why we actually shifted from erotica to fan fiction. The erotica felt a little limiting in that it was just us kind of reacting to the ridiculousness of it. With fan fiction, it's more interesting because we get to imagine this world, right, where there's more representation. You get to see more queer relationships that you want. I think as queer folks, we're so used to just like taking crumbs of representation, a prolonged glance or like two people touching hands and running with it. And that's all we really get. So I think for us, it was really important to create a space where we could talk about female desire, we could talk about different types of queer couples and different types of queer people, and, create this space where we could imagine a world where the media wasn't super heteronormative.
The idea of writing fan fiction and that being like a radical act that creates space and helps queer people be seen can sometimes be brushed off as being trivial, but it's really not. So can you talk a little bit more about queer representation and kind of like your experiences with it?
So for me, I'm bisexual, and there's been a few bisexual characters who I relate to on television. There's been a lot that I don't. There's been a lot of villains or people leaving their husband or being, the other person. But I love Stephanie Beatrice's character in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I loved Willow and Buffy. Willow and Buffy was, a really great character to see. The one thing that I think often happens with bisexual people and characters on television that I wish would happen a little less is that I think their bisexuality is sometimes written in as an afterthought, where, you have this like straight passing character who doesn't seem to be questioning or doesn't seem to be bisexual. And then all of a sudden they get like a girlfriend or a boyfriend if they're a guy. And it seems like an afterthought sometimes, I'll be honest. I think as a writer and, an inspiring screenwriter, I think that's something that I really hope to, play a part in changing someday.
As a fellow bisexual human, I feel a lot of those things. Also, I just have to note that I'm also a huge Buffy fan and would love to be Willow for Halloween. So if anybody watching this video would like to come with me for Halloween as Tara or Oz or Kennedy, slide into my DMs. That aside, can we talk a little bit about your experience with sex ed and whether any of that included LGBTQ people?
So, did I get any sex education that was LGBTQ inclusive? Absolutely not. I went to high school around 10 years ago, and the type of sex ed I got, I would call fear-mongering scare tactic sex ed. For women, it was really just teaching us not to get pregnant. That was the number one goal. And the sex we talked about was always, referencing penetrative sex between a man and a woman. As a teen that was questioning my sexuality, I really didn't feel like having a sex life and a positive sex life with a woman was something that was, in the frame of possibility for me. The only other point of reference I had for what sex could look like for me with a woman was, these, male gazy moments in film and television, like 2 women making out at the MTV Awards, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Selma Blair kissing in Cruel Intentions, which, I still love, but it doesn't really give you an image of what type of relationship you could have in the future. But for sex ed, it was really just scare tactics. And it wasn't honest about how many people do have STDs. It wasn't honest about the different types of ways you can define sex and you can define pleasure. So it was really, really heteronormative. And I think for me as a teen, that was hard because it was like, I'm not going to learn anything here. And I kind of had to teach myself down the line. It was a lot of Googling, a lot of seeking queer friends to talk to about that stuff. But I really, for me in high school, there was barely any resources for sex education, which is why I think channels like this and people who are kind of taking it into their own hands to change that narrative is super important. And it was something that I really wish I had in high school because I think it would have assisted in me coming out sooner, honestly.
Well, thank you so much, first of all. I'm trying to create an inclusive place on this channel. Lastly, can you talk a little bit about what you hope people get away from the podcast?
What do I hope people will take away from the podcast Queer as Fiction? I really hope that not only is Queer as Fiction, a nice little silly break from your day. I hope it feels like you're hanging out with friends when you listen to it. But I also, more than that, I hope that, as I said before, it broadens your frame of possibility for the type of relationships you can have, for who you can be. A lot of our listeners are actually in places where they're not super safe coming out. We have people listening in different countries. We have people who are in very religious households. We have people who are in more rural areas where they're not safe coming out. And I think, there's no correct timeline for coming out, but I think when you have a frame of reference for the life you could have and just the fact that you could be out and happy someday, I think that's super important. So when people listen to our podcast, I really hope that they get that shred of hope, and it kind of it makes them feel more included. Even if you haven't come out to anyone but you're listening, I hope that we broaden the spectrum of possibility for people. I hope they feel more comfortable talking about female desire, and I hope that as queer folks we start demanding more than just the crumbs of representation on television. I hope we really, really start fighting for those nuanced narratives with complex characters, and hopefully we play a part in creating those narratives. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for having this little chat with me about representation and sex ed and queerness and bisexuality. It was super duper lovely. Again, you should all go check out Queer as Fiction. It really does fill my heart with a lot of joy. It's a really wonderful podcast. I will link it in the description, as well as links to Kirsten and the other hosts' social media. If you have any thoughts on all the things that we talked about, please leave them in the comments below. Also, if you are another bi human, you can leave a little bi five to celebrate this Bi Visibility Month, this Bi Visibility Week. You can find me on social media on Twitter and Instagram. You can like this video if you like it and subscribe if you aren't already. Have a lovely day. Do not fight me. I personally think that Kennedy's super hot, so we can agree to disagree if you don't like Kennedy. But yeah, if anybody wants to get in on that,